pretty out.
This is a orientation tour. This is the kind of thing we do daily here to give you an idea of what took place here. Now, we're not going to be walking a whole lot. It's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour. And if you need to break off, you want to come back and see the firing, we'll be doing the firing a couple times today. So you don't have to miss anything, but you're not going to hurt my feelings if you want to go back and watch the cannons go off. But we are going to be stepping off the trail just a little bit at different times, kind of going off-road. So just be careful with your footing, okay? Just be really, really careful, because if you fall and get hurt, I've got to fill out paperwork. And I've sworn that off, so we don't want to do that. So we're glad that you're here. What's happening in 1864? It's an election year. Abraham Lincoln is running in November for re-election, and it's not a slam dunk, not by a long shot, because he hasn't won very many battles here in the Eastern Theater. If you've studied the war, you realize we always seem to put a lot of emphasis on what's happening east of the Mississippi, right? No matter what generals are doing west of the Mississippi, the Eastern Theater seemed to be the most important, and Lincoln needs victories. He had a victory the previous summer at Gettysburg, right? But he needs more of those victories to be able to bring the war to a happy conclusion. So in March of 1864, he summons to Washington, D.C., Major General Ulysses Grant. And Grant is promoted. He is now Lieutenant General. He equals in rank George Washington. First time that's happened in about 80-odd years. And he commands all Union armies. The campaign was destined to result in heavier losses to both armies than any previously suffered. Good Lord, he was right about that. In that 1 month's time, May of 1864, the Union Army is going to lose upwards of 40,000 troops. But Grant commands all Union armies. He can get troops, he can get replacements, he can get reinforcements. Over at Bermuda 100 is the Army of the James, commanded by Benjamin Butler. They've just been whipped by smaller Confederate forces under Beauregard, and they are at Bermuda 100 pretty much bottled up. Grant reaches out and takes a whole Army Corps, the 18th Corps, the Army of the James, commanded by someone who impressed him in Chattanooga the year before, General William F. Smith. They called him Old Baldy, Baldy Smith. And soon these guys are in transports, and they're going to be coming down and landing at White House Landing on the Pamunkey. So Grant is pretty set with reinforcements. Lee is going to lose about 25,000, and those are troops he can't really afford to lose. He has to beg, borrow, and steal to try to get as many replacements as possible. He can't get a whole Army Corps. He can get one division, Robert Hope's division from the Petersburg Command. But soon they are going to be heading this way. I've always looked at Cold Harbor as a battle that's more like Gettysburg. They didn't intend to fight here. The battle the troops just arrived. They just kind of developed here, if you will. And so this is going to be really a hard-fought battle, and it's going to be Robert E. Lee's last victory as the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia. Spreads through the Union Army that they have arrived. They're here to help. The word also spreads up to the Confederate Army as well. You can't keep a secret in this war, it seems like. And Lee knows all about it. And what Robert E. Lee believes is that Grant is going to use this whole Army Corps, about between 20 and 27,000 men, to perhaps congregate on Lee's right flank and hit Lee's right flank, roll it up, and then just come rolling right on into Richmond and get into the Confederate rear. But he really can't trust that. He's not sure if he can weaken his defensive line up at Pottapotamoy Creek. So on May the 30th, he sends one brigade of South Carolina cavalry to the northeast to scout it out. And they run into a full division of Yankee cavalry, Union cavalry, that includes the Michigan Brigade, commanded by George Armstrong Custer, a full division. And the South Carolina Cavalry Brigade gets cut up pretty badly, but they come back with the news that Robert E. Lee was looking for. Yes, the Union Army is congregating on your right flank. And so Lee is going to start getting ideas. Maybe he needs to start moving his army again. Again, the armies are starting to show up here, right? But in the meantime, he needs to guard that crossroads, Cold Harbor. About 3 o'clock or so, the 6th Corps is here, and these guys are worn out. They've got to go and get some food and coffee in them, right? Baldy Smith's 18th Corps is not going to arrive until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. These guys are mad as hornets, and they're marching in the heat. So this battle that was supposed to start at 9 o'clock in the morning on June 1st won't get started until about 6 a.m. Excuse 6 p.m. rather. But you know, it is going to be initially a Union victory. Because what happens, and raise your hand if you've been here before, if you walked the trail. This is going to sound familiar to you. If you haven't, directly this way, you can see kind of the way the land kind of rolls there. There's a creek. It's called Bloody Run. It doesn't come from the Civil War, unfortunately. I think the National Park Service named it, so not as romantic. But it's cut a ravine. You know, all the centuries, and if you go down our park road here, you're going to really cross Bloody Run. But it's caused erosion. And there is probably maybe about a 30-yard or so chasm there. There's a couple of ravines there that the creek has cut into it. But 24 years old, recently he is elevated to brigade command, and he is right across the field there. And he is part of this June 1st assault. He has veterans in his brigade, but he also has a rookie regiment, the 2nd Connecticut Heavy Artillery Regiment. These guys have just had a cushy job. They just spent 2 years in barracks guarding Washington, D.C. Right? They, comfortable bunk. They've got 3 Indians today, and their uniforms look like you're sure. They look dark blue. They look good. And now Grant gets them out. Grant was able to have the leverage with the president to be able to take whatever troops he needs. So a lot of these heavy artillery regiments guarding Washington, D.C., guarding Baltimore, are now back in the Army infantry. And the 2nd Connecticut Heavy, Richmond, Connecticut, are one of those regiments. And they're green ones. They're marching into camp with these veterans of the 6th Corps, and they're jeered at. They're called bandbox soldiers. They're going into combat for the first time in this early evening of June 1st, 1864. I think. Yeah, we're just doing these. Thank you so much. When your life depends on it, yes, you're going to be able to do it, okay? Confederate soldiers are eating pretty well. They're just, a few times they're right outside their capital, but they think they're going to lose. Confederate soldiers in these trenches think not only are they going to lose this battle at Cold Harbor, but they're going to lose big. So a lot of these young men make the decision, really to fight like wildcats. To sell their lives as dearly as possible. And think about what a huge psychological damage that would do. Grant has got a problem. He's got 5 Union Army Corps commanders who don't like each other. They did not coordinate their assault. There was supposed to be reconnaissance done. General Meade was responsible for that. There was some, but not nearly enough. So the Union Army making this assault have no idea what's out ahead of us. Right? And these are not only hand-dug trenches in one day, but they were interlocking trenches. Crossfire, fields of crossfire were set up. These are going to be devastating. And forgive me when I tell you this, it's going to be hell for anybody charging in some of those crossfires. He said, we got within 8 or 10 rods of the enemy's works and was obliged to halt. My heart pains me to think of the operation. The moment we mounted our works, a deadly sweeping fire was opened upon us from thousands of muskets, as well as a few batteries. The men began to fall before we got 20 feet from our own works, and there was 200 rods to pass over before we got to their works. And all the way we would be exposed, but on we went. The double quick turned into a run. This kept up until we were too tired to go faster than a brisk step. For the distance was so great, and the ground so uneven and muddy that we soon tired out. We kept on at the same pace until some of the most advanced reached the rebel parapet. But of all that stated, not more than a third reached there. And what could they do? Nothing but die, and those who had not fallen took refuge for the life of this.
Let's talk about what's in your hand. Like I told you before, we're gonna be dealing with some stuff that I didn't know existed until now. Now the first map that you're looking at, can I steal yours real quick? I'm gonna give it back, I promise. First map that you're looking at is from Gordon Ray's excellent book about Cold Harbor. If anybody has any questions or really wants to dive deep, believe me, this is where we all start. If you're gonna be the geek out history of Cold Harbor, you want to look at Gordon Ray's history. Now, what's so cool about this, and I'm going to orient you right now. See this road right behind me? This is Cold Harbor Road, okay? So take your map the way you guys are looking at this. If you're holding it like this, turn it upside down, okay? We're gonna be going across the road, but the real fun stuff is what's in the middle. Okay, so pull this up right here. I cannot tell you how ecstatic I am to share this with you because nobody has seen this or had it in their hands since 1865. I'm serious. Okay? I found this at the National Archives. These are the original plats of what's called the Mickler map. These engineers came out here at the time of the battle, started surveying, and then published this map for the U.S. government after the Civil War. As far as I'm concerned, this is the map-making equivalent of landing on the moon. It's incredible. And the National Archives just digitized them. And I found them last week while I was looking for stuff for another tour. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta, and today is the day, folks. You've got it. This is the clearest anybody has ever seen these earthworks and this terrain since the map makers themselves. And I am so excited to share that with you. Famous photograph. You can sort of imagine what the ground might look like if he turned the camera around. This is pretty much the view looking that way. I am 95% certain that this is the case, but I am not 100% certain. So I'm not going to say for sure that this is. If somebody wants to get geeky and model the terrain and everything like that, and then I could tell you for sure, because in 3D it's really amazing. But I don't know yet, but I've got a camera here. Wouldn't it make sense if he turned it around while this burial detail was doing their job and picking up the remains of the people we're going to talk about next? How incredible is that? For most from fatigue and loss of sleep. As far as for more than 2 weeks, we did not average 2 hours out of 24. We arrived here about the 1st of June. Sharp skirmishing commenced here. Right over there, in fact. We drove the rebels out of their position on the crest of a high hill, which they fortified strongly, throwing up heavy breastworks with an abatis or stockade made of small pine trees, which you just saw in that photograph. Driven into the ground at one end, the other elevated at an angle about 45 degrees with sharpened points. Against this work, we were ordered to charge on the morning of the 3rd about 4:30 a.m. We lay entrenched about 900 yards from this work. So, right over there, see where that ridge is? You see like a tan roof? Right behind there is where they've arrived. They've got those orders. They're going to attack. They're basically right back by the Garthright House, if you can picture that. And now they're going to be coming right across this field. I think the others' experience was similar and the casualties were about the same. Dead and wounded lie from the pits we left to the rebel work. But at the work, they were almost each in place. Can you picture it? Horrible. Right where we're standing has just become hell on earth. Colonel Porter's faithful servant. I really want to know what that means. But this is his account of what happened to his boss. Whether he was African American or not, I can't say right now. Maybe you could go further and find that out for me, and I'll love you. I will create a small religion just for you. He said, Colonel Porter called the officers together and firmly and calmly informed them that the task was one of almost certain death, but that orders must be obeyed. He then sprang to the top of the earthworks and waving his sword cried, "Boys, follow me, I will lead you." Every man in the brigade rushed over the entrenchments at the word and swept down on the rebel works, from end to end of which a torrent of death flame was pouring. Scarce half the horrid intervening space was passed before a minie ball struck the colonel in the side of the neck, and he fell. Struggling to his feet, he again cheered on his men, and again dauntlessly faced the tempest of iron and lead. The next instant, a ball passed through his heart, and he fell on his hands and knees, undoubtedly killed instantly, as his body was in that position when recovered. What the soldiers actually did here. Now, if you care, like me, about what soldiers experience and respect them as human beings, I think it's time to stop wiping a giant brush across their experience and talking about Grant and talking about ridiculous stuff like men pinning their names Okay, then why are there any unknown graves in the National Cemetery? There are thousands! Okay, just point by point, these stupid things drop away to the point where I'm going to tell you right now, most of what you hear about Cold Harbor is not true. A dramatic hook. You know it failed. We're going to watch it fail. We know that. To give you an idea about how messed up this goes, remember, 5 Union Corps, 6th Corps, 18th Corps, 2nd Corps in this area. The 6th Corps, it's not even the dirty little secret of the Park Service. This is just the truth. Does not move forward on June 3rd. So where you see Neal and Ricketts, they don't move. 2 jackhammers down. They don't go forward. So the Confederate commander, you don't believe me on this, the Confederate commander who's in those earthworks right over there by the visitor center, his name was Johnson Haygood from South Carolina. If anybody, Citadel grads, one of their barracks is named after him. Okay, he's right there in those earthworks that you can see from the visitor center. He says about the June 3rd assault, he's like, I can't understand what people are talking about when they say all this slaughter at Cold Harbor. He says, I was situated near the center of the line along which this murderous repulse was given, and awake and vigilant of the progress of events, was not aware at any time of any serious assault having been given. An opportunity to turn and fire at whoever's going forward, who just happens to be Baldy Smith's 18th Corps, which is now pouring into that ravine like a pencil going into a sharpener. This is dumb luck. Normally, I don't like to hear from generals. I don't care about generals. They're useful only in the planning. But Baldy Smith did turn in a memoir. In fact, he's the only Corps commander that did. And unfortunately, it's largely full of, here's why I didn't really screw up. Here's why everybody did me wrong. Here's why if they'd listened to me, I was so smart. All this kind of stuff. Worst kind of memoirs ever. If you got to write memoirs, please don't do that. Try to cut to the truth. But he did leave us one, so I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to you all in the story if I didn't talk about it. Remember, we talked about the order going out and not being interpreted or passed along by me, right? So they just get this order, this big general order, attack at 4:30 in the morning. What do you do with that? And Baldy Smith, being new, he's got to answer those questions. He says, I at once wrote to General Wright, that's the 6th Corps, the other 2 jackhammers over there. I at once wrote to General Wright asking what his place of attack was to be, saying I would conform mine to it in order that at least 2 corps might be working in unison. General Wright replied that he was going to pitch in.
Well, gee, thanks. That's helpful.
Right. What? Thank you. Remember, this guy is new. He doesn't even really know Horatio Wright. Horatio Wright is new to command. Sedgwick had just been killed at Spotsylvania. He's filling in. He's got the job now. This is like his first big battle. When it's my first big battle and I've just gotten the big chair, I'm going to be like hyper crazy and vigilant about my orders. Here's General Wright saying, I'm going to pitch in. And Baldy Smith's like, yeah, that's great. Maybe we want to hook up. Nothing. Crickets. Right? And he says, this left me nothing to do but carry out the orders literally. And I sat on my horse on the morning of the 3rd of June with my watch in my hand. And at precisely 4:30 a.m., I gave the murderous order. One of them wrote, actually this is the 13th New Hampshire, we were over there, but just to give you an idea, I love when they get the weather report, so I always include it. Okay. June 3rd, Friday, warm, a drizzling rain. At 4:30 a.m., there is an earth-shaking roar as of the united burst of 100 thunderstorms. Can you hear it? And the 12th New Hampshire coming right at us, right here in this field. So from your right across like this, over this postcard view. They wrote, and by the way, look it up on archive.org. Y'all know about that site? Oh, it's so good. It's like all Harvard Library, Yale Library. It's what they pull Google books from. They've been digitizing all their 19th century stuff. Their regimental history is gold. And so is the 13th New Hampshire. It's like you're from New Hampshire, you write an amazing regimental history. So it makes my job very, very easy. And in that book, they described it thus. It seemed more like a volcanic blast than a battle, and was about as destructive. The men went down in rows, just as they marched in the ranks, and so many at a time that those in rear of them thought they were lying down. What a visual. Remember, this is before anybody's got to watch like the Discovery Channel and, have an idea about what a volcano sounds like, right? A volcanic blast, like the loudest sound you can imagine. Sergeant Piper of Company B of the 12th New Hampshire wrote, "The men bent down as they pushed forward, as if trying as they were to breast a tempest, and the files of men went down like rows of blocks or bricks, pushed over by striking against each other."